So for some time now, I've been wanting to make a series of videos about MBTI. So what is MBTI? It stands for Myers-Briggs Typology Indicator. So it's something that some of you would have come across in your workplaces. You might be asked to do a quiz and then you get back a 4-letter code, which is one of 16. And so they'll say, well, this is your personality type. So it could look like ISTJ, ENFP, ENTJ. And if you read about your type, you'll probably go, wow. If you get the right type, it's usually an extremely accurate indication of your behaviors and thinking. But what I want to do is take everybody step by step through the system so that you understand how it works. So it's not really about typing someone as such. What this code actually is, it's describes which cognitive functions that you prefer to use. And these functions were first described or discovered by Carl Jung over 100 years ago. He wrote a book called Temperament Types, and he wrote in detail about these 8 cognitive functions and what they do, how they manifest in people's behavior and thinking. However, it wasn't necessarily practical for most people to use, and this is where the Myers-Briggs comes into it. So Myers and Briggs were a mother-daughter psychologist who worked out a system for people to be able to work out which of these cognitive functions they were using. So essentially, once you know your type and you understand how the functions operate, you can see what are going to be your strengths and sort of supporting functions and weaknesses and things that you can develop. So I've been teaching it for over 20 years. And in the beginning, I just help people to look at basically 4 questions which help you to work out your type, your 4 letters. But later on, when I really understood how the system worked, I was, wow, I kind of wish I'd known it earlier, because it's an incredibly useful coaching tool to understand in depth how your thinking and behavior, why you do certain things, why you resonate with certain people, why you find some traits quite difficult, why you get along or have challenges with certain people. It's a really interesting and very useful tool. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I came across, by really random chance, a video of Lex Friedman, really interesting YouTube interviewer, and he was interviewing a former CIA spy and asked him what he thought of personality type tests and are they useful. And the spy said, extremely useful, but it's MBTI that is the one that the main spy agencies around the world use. Because with just 4 questions, you can work out someone's code, and it's quite predictable, people's behavior, especially under stress. So I'll play that video, because my aim with this video is to convince you to stay tuned as we go step by step into the system and how it works and how you can personally use it. So let's listen to this little segment of the interview.
You also mentioned personality tests. That's really interesting. So how effective are personality tests? One, for the hiring process, but also for understanding a human being.
So personality is extremely important for understanding a human being. And I would say that there's 1,000 different ways of looking at personality. The only one that I count with any significance is the MBTI. And the MBTI is what all the leading spy agencies around the world use as well.
Wow, that's kind of interesting to hear.
Oh, yeah.
There's been criticisms of that kind of test.
There have been criticisms for a long time.
Yeah, and you think there's value?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's a few reasons why, right? So first, MBTI makes the claim that your core personality doesn't change over time, and that's how it's calibrated. And one of the big arguments is that people say that your personality can change over time. In my experience, the MBTI is exactly correct. Your core personality does not change because your core personality is defined as your personality when all resources are removed.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, your emergency mode, your dire conditions, that is your core personality. We can all act a little more extroverted. We can all, be a little more empathetic when we have tons of time and money and patience. When you strip away all of that time, money, and patience, how empathetic are you? How how much do you like being around other people? How much do you like being alone? Do you make judgments or do you analyze information? That's what's so powerful about MBTI is it's talking about what people are like when you strip away resources. And then because it's so consistent, it's also only 4 codes. It's super easy to be able to assess a human being through a dialogue, through a series of conversations, to be able to hone in with high accuracy what is their 4-letter code. There's only 16 options, and it becomes extremely valuable. Is it perfectly precise? And does everybody do it the same? I mean, those things the answers to those are no. But is it operationally useful in a short period of time? That is a resoundingly powerful yes. With experience, with a good MBTI test, with a good paid test, a 400, 500 question test, once you understand your own code, and then you're taught how to assess the code of others. With those two things kind of combined, because then you have experience and learning, it becomes very useful, and you can have high confidence in the conclusions that you reach about people's professions, about people's relationships with family, about people's relationships professionally, people's capabilities to deal with stress, how people will perform when pushed outside of their comfort zones. Really, really powerful, useful stuff in corporate world and in the espionage world.
So in terms of compressed representation of another human being, you can't do much better than those 4 letters.
I don't believe you can do much better. In my experience, I have not seen anything better. The faster you learn it, the faster you learn what your own sort of natural strengths and weaknesses are, the faster you get to stop wasting time on things that you're never going to be good at, and you get to double down on the things that you're already naturally skilled or interested in.
So I hope that's piqued your interest. So in the first of the videos, we'll look at the 4 questions in depth so that you can understand how to type yourself and others. But as I mentioned, it's only a code for the cognitive functions. So that's what we want to go into next, is what are these cognitive functions? And then how do they work in different personalities? Because you can work out the functions, but once you know the type, you'll know the predominant function that someone uses, and then the support function. So we all predominantly use 4. It's called a stack. And once you know someone's type, you'll know their stack, which means you'll know their main strength, the supporting function, which is like a yin-yang. You have an extroverted function, there'll be an introverted function to balance it out, and then you'll work out their your potential development function and potential weakness function and how it all operates in your type. Now, I know on my channel I talk a lot about meditation and the fact that the soul itself is beyond space and time and sound and the physical world. But when the soul comes into a body, it is like a character that we're given to play. And that character will have certain traits associated with it. Where with the MBTI system, it said that you're born into that type. A lot of people will say, no, I don't want to be stuck within a system. You're not. You're ultimately free to use any of the functions that you wish. However, most people will have a certain predictable patterns to their behavior. So when people say, oh, I used to be this type, but now I'm a different type, what's really happening is that they're maturing and they're use different kind of parts of themselves in different situations appropriately. So they're becoming more mature, more balanced, more well-rounded. So if your first function is an extroverted function, you will learn to develop its supporting introverted function, which balances out your type and your behavior and your thinking. And so often people just don't know how the system works, and they'll claim that their type has changed, but it actually hasn't. It's just that you're using the functions in a more rounded, mature way. And I think knowing the system can actually help you to do that. So I'll just give you a quick example with my own type, which is called the ENFP type. They're known as the sort of creative chaos type, and that's because the dominant function that an ENFP will use is called extroverted intuition. So this function looks at possibilities and patterns outside. So they tend to, I can often spot them because they get very excited about whatever topic they're into and explore it in depth, and they'll link it to other topics that they know about. A week later, they'll be on to another completely different topic, but it will be still stored in their database to connect all together. Now, that function loves to explore possibilities, but when it's overused, which I've seen in myself, it can lead to this habit of sort of fantasizing or imagining all these different kind of lifestyles and possibilities. So I might see a van, and now I'm daydreaming about traveling in that van and looking up the cost of vans. And literally, I'll get a dopamine hit, as everybody does using their dominant function. You get a thrill from it, which makes you use it more and more. And then when it's in overdrive, I can waste an awful lot of time daydreaming about lives that I'm not meant to live, instead of actually choosing one idea and using other functions to actually make it practical in this life. Yeah, so knowing that function, it's much more clear to me when I'm overusing it. So this is how our strengths become our weaknesses. I'll also recognize why I'm kind of connecting with other people, because they're using the same functions, we're speaking the same language, which has also helped me to appreciate people who have got opposite functions. And by appreciating opposite functions, I'm actually also starting to understand them and possibly use them a bit more, which is an overall kind of way to use our potential. So that's just a little bit of a hint or insight into what we're going to be looking at. And I really do hope that you tune in. The first video is going to ask the question, are you more of an extrovert or an introvert? And a lot of you think you know the answer, but according to this, how the system works, you may be surprised. So stay tuned, and hope you join me for this series. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.